And we are back for the second episode with this visual component. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into the Colby Health and Wellness Podcast. This is part of my effort to give you a zero cost to consumer platform so that you can finally understand these pieces of your health and your health care so that you can make the best, most informed decisions that in the long term will yield the greatest result for you. Today, we're going to be talking about how to navigate this nightmare of a health system that we have in the Americas. It seems like everyone I talk to has a nightmare story about, oh my gosh, well, this person led me here, and this person was supposed to be a great doctor, and it turns out that this hospital was in network, but this doctor that works in this hospital was not in network. Like, it's just nightmarish stories about this stuff. And I feel for you guys. We just had someone, decide to end someone's life very publicly because of their chronic low back pain and their frustrations with health insurance. So very sad stuff. It's very sad that someone felt that that was the best decision for them. And regardless of how you feel about that situation, there were certainly a lot of people online that voiced their opinion of, oh, well, my condolences are out of network or something like that. And it just shows that regardless of how you feel about the situation, there have been so many people out there that feel like they've just been run amok by the healthcare system. And it's more than just a few. So it's an unfortunate thing, but it is a system that we have that ultimately can yield great results if used in the right way. So I'm going to show you guys one of the best ways that I think there is to move through this healthcare system and to yield the best results for you. So before we get into this, I am not your doctor. I am not even a licensed physician. I am definitely not your licensed physician. I hold no medicine. I hold no medical licensure at this point in time. I am simply a student at a Doctor of Chiropractic college. And this is what I have seen so far as the best way to help people with generally understanding their condition, generally moving in a better direction with their condition to relieve symptoms, and ultimately, ideally, in some cases, completely put them in remission. So, take that with the grain of salt that you will, and however you want to take that is completely fine. This information is free for you guys. So, I want to say before we get into anything, obviously, I'm not your doctor. This is not medical advice, blah, blah, blah. However, I will say this is also going for chronic conditions. If you have something like acute appendicitis and your appendix is going to rupture or has ruptured, we don't necessarily have 3 months to go get multiple opinions on, I think it's an appendix. I think it's an appendix problem. This is the best surgeon for you. And then trying to rule out the best person for you. That's not how you want to go about that condition. If you have an acute condition, acute meaning something that is rapidly onset, something that is very, very concerning, something that's causing you a lot of pain or discomfort in some way, get that taken care of and do it at all costs. You need to do that right now. This podcast is designed for something for people who have conditions. A chronic condition is defined as technically something that is 3 months or longer, withstanding of symptoms. So a good example is low back pain or ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease or something like things that take a long time to deal with, right? And so I shouldn't say take a long time to deal with. I should say things that are standing for a long period of time. That's the best way to define them. And so when we talk about these things, I want to look at this as I want to put you guys in the driver's seat, and I want to make you guys the experts in your own way. And when I say expert in the own way, I'm not asking you to go to 4 years of medical school to figure out your condition, but what I'm asking you to do is take some ownership of the problem and understand the basic pieces that you need to, so you don't sound like a fool and so you don't get so terribly misrepresented. Because a lot of people I'm going to be honest, if I was a devious person and someone came into my office and they said, oh, well, I have low back pain. Okay, well, I can say, oh, well, we should run a PSA test for your prostate health because, that could be a metastatic prostate issue. We could run all kinds of blood markers for potential bone diseases, right? Well, I think we need an x-ray too. because an X-ray is going to help us rule out a lot of things, and we're going to need to see you for 10 visits to make sure. Like you could just bill up the wazoo for this stuff. Now, in reality, there's not actually a whole lot of up billing that. I mean, like that's a serious fine, it's a serious issue, and so for most people, you're not going to run into that. But what I will say is that you just need to make sure that you are informed enough about your condition. You are understanding enough of, oh, this is what it is. This is roughly what it is. So if something sounds like seriously wrong to you, you're like, that doesn't sound all that right. Like, that sounds really weird. So, anyways, let's talk about it, right? So, at first, if it's a chronic condition and something that's been going on for a long period of time, and you're not having any serious problems, and I just say something like low back pain, right? Because if you have something like cancer, like, dude, you got to get on it fast. Like, you need to do something about it now. So I'm just gonna apply this to low back pain, and you can apply it to your situation if you think that it is medically relevant to you. Understand the anatomy, physiology, and pathology, basic pathologies of your condition, right? And so if I say understand the anatomy, well, for low back pain, right? So let's talk about low back pain. So for low back pain, I would say, okay, well, we need to understand the anatomy, right? So this goes for the bone, the osseous structures like the bones, right? We want to understand the discs, the facets, how they align, what their angle is. Is there possibly an issue there? I want to understand the ligamentous structures. I want to understand the muscular structures. I want to understand the nerve structures that go into the low back and the hips and the pelvis and everything like that. And then I want to understand the physiology, right? So how these things move and how these things work, right? So nerve conduction, roughly how does that work? I want to understand roughly, how muscle structures work and what types of muscle structures there are. Could there be an issue there? I want to understand. There's a whole bunch of things. I would understand, bone and how bone works and cortical bone and osseous structures. And then I would move into the pathology. Now, here's why I will caution you. I will say you don't have to go super deep into this pathology section, because the reality of it is, this is where I caution people, because if you use Dr. Google is going to tell you just hop in the coffin yesterday. Like it's over. You're cooked. You're going to die tomorrow. And then they're just like, basically they just follow it up with like, see a doctor if you hope to live. Like, no, it's not. For so many people out there, that's not what's going on. That's not your issue. For some people it may be, but that's a very, very small percentage of people. And it's really frustrating. And so what I say is, when I talk about, looking at these pathologies, I'm saying understand the most common conditions that are associated with this, right? If it's low back pain, okay, is there an intervertebral disc issue? If it's low back pain, okay, could this be potentially a metastatic prostate issue? Metastatic prostate issue, right? Meaning that it is prostate cancer that is spread to the low back and down the hips, right? And then this is the thing that kind of gets scary. It's like, I almost don't want to tell people to look at the pathologies, because then people get concerned and they're like, oh my gosh, well, I do have, I had this weird pain in my hip, and I have pain in my low back, and it must be, a prostate issue. And it's like, no, not really. That's probably just sounds like you've got a little bit of an imbalance, and I would bet you could be adjusted, right? So be careful looking at the pathologies. Don't read too much into it, because I promise you, majority of medical students as well, and this is definitely me, we convince ourselves we have every damn pathology we look at. It is so frustrating. It is so mentally draining. I would argue that is one of the toughest parts of school, is thinking that you have every pathology that you look at, and you're like, oh, well, damn, I'm cooked. I'm gonna die tomorrow. Anyways, so just be careful looking at the pathologies. But I would really understand the anatomy and the physiology. So if a doctor's talking to you about it, and you say, hey doc, what is going on? And they talk to you about it, and they sound like a complete flaming idiot, right? And they don't sound like they're talking about anything. I would look for a second doctor, and that can be it's essentially allows you to have some sort of like a bullshit meter of like, okay, well, this guy doesn't sound like he knows what he's talking about at all. And if someone isn't willing to talk to you about about like what exactly it is. Like I understand people are on a schedule and I get that, but like if someone isn't willing to explain to you the basics and the fundamentals of like what is going on with your condition and what it potentially can be and how they found their diagnosis and everything, if they can't take 5 minutes to explain that to you, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, I don't think that's a great person that's the physician that you want to be seeing, because if they can't take that time to talk to you, either they don't completely know what they're talking about, or they're someone that is so full of themselves that they are that puts them in a position to have a huge ego, and they might completely overlook something when you give them a very valid reason to be concerned about it. So that's my opinion. I'm sure that would generate some controversy, but that is my opinion. So when I'm looking at that, and now we're going to go to get a second opinion, because there's a lot of things that can go on with this. And I will say, I'm just going to caution you before I say second opinion. Do not, I repeat, do not just hop on TikTok and start researching low back pain as our example. Because I cannot tell you. I mean, do not go on social media, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. Like if you have long form YouTube content where someone is trying to explain potential anatomy and physiology of the low back and potential pathologies, like okay, listen to that. That's fine. That would probably be a great source. I would say YouTube is probably a decent thing. If you have a channel that is a big channel that has great reviews and things like that, like yeah, I would watch some of the YouTube videos, and it might help you understand if you're a visual learner like myself. And so, if you're when I'm talking about this stuff, I'm saying don't go on Instagram and TikTok, try to get these short grabby content of like, if you have low back pain, you might have this, and then it like gives you this whole reason to like freak out and like flip your shit because you're like, oh my gosh, well like I'm basically gonna die tomorrow, like I'm cooked. No, you're not. It's not actually like that. All you need to do is just stay away from the short, grabby content, because I can't tell you how much of that is wrong. I remember Denzel Washington said in an interview one time, and they were trying to interview him for something that I believe wasn't even remotely true. And he's like, "What a responsibility you all have to put out the correct information." And he's like, "Right now, people are just interested in putting out information." Just trying to be the first to get it out there. Who cares who it hurts? Who cares, what the ramifications are for people? Just get it out there. Just be the first. Just get the views, right? And that's definitely how I feel like a lot of the Instagram content is and the TikTok content is. Because you can worry to the ends of the earth about some of the conditions you might have if you hop on TikTok. And they show you the worst of the worst possible conditions and how there's a bacteria that can eat your brain, and you're like, oh my god, I have these symptoms. Well, I'm just gonna die tomorrow, because like in that case, like I believe in reported history, there's like been like no one that's like survived that, which is really scary. But the reality of it is, there's a very specific type of water it needs to be in, a very specific temperature, very specific climate, and you have to have it, certain way in the nasal passage so it can go into the brain. Like, there's so many things that go into this stuff. Like, you're not going to know all that just from watching that video on TikTok or Instagram. So, I'm not going to beat the dead horse anymore, but I would look in long format, trusted ways to get information. Don't be trying to look for some quick, grabby, catchy, like, oh, this is how you stretch your back in 5 seconds on Instagram. It's likely not going to do jack shit for you. Now, as far as getting real second opinions from a doctor, not Dr. Google or social media, getting second opinions is, in my opinion, a very important thing to do, because the medical system in the West is set up something like this, right? We have a neurologist, we have an orthopedist, we have a gastroenterologist, we have podiatry, we have everything. And these specialties are great. They're amazing. They're great at handling problems in their own sector. The problem is there's not a ton of overlap, right? And this is where I believe a chiropractor really comes in handy. Is because a good chiropractor will say, oh, well, this isn't necessarily, because a chiropractor is taught on everything in the body, and not saying that, people in regular Western medicine are not. However, they have their own specific specialty, and they know everything about that specialty. And so they're gonna know they're the freaking ace of that. but they probably don't know a ton about everything else, right? A chiropractor is kind of like the jack of all trades, but a master at none type of thing, right? And some of them might be a master at, neurology or whatever they have a diplomate or have been studying for 20 years in. Like, I'm not saying they're not. However, I'm saying that chiropractors tend to look at things as a whole body view, as like, oh, well, yeah, that might be a systemic problem. Yeah, well, that might be this, that might be that. And I'm not saying that these other cats are not. I'm just saying that they'll be able to find a problem that it probably makes sense in their differential diagnosis. Is like, let's say we go to someone for low back pain, right? Let's give you an example. If I go to a neurologist for the low back pain, he's gonna say, dude, there's something wrong with these nerves. I don't know what's going on, but there's something wrong with these nerves. We need to do more testing for these nerves because the nerve conduction seems to be jacked up or whatever, right? And then we say, okay, well, that's honestly true. It makes sense in his sector. He's a neuro guy, right? And so we go to the orthopedist, and the orthopedist is gonna say, oh, dude, there's something wrong with these bones. These bones are severely degenerated. These bones have, this issue, and they're aligned this way, and we got to put a rod in there to stabilize it, right? Okay, well, it's pretty valid reason in his book and his life, right? And the way that he views medicine in his eyes. And we go to gastroenterology. No, we go to urology. Urology says, oh, it could be a prostatic why do I keep saying that? Metastatic prostate issue, right? And it's like, oh, it's potentially cancer that's gone into the low back. Well, we need to order a PSA for all this. We need to make sure we know what it is. And then we have gastroenterology, which is the study of intestines, and they say, oh, well, I think it's a chronic disease. I think it's a chronic issue in your stomach that could be, influencing some pathway, or maybe it's directly affecting the low back by pressing on it or something like that. And like, technically, all these cats are right to a degree. Like, that's the annoying shit about this, is all these guys are right to a degree. And in their own mind, they are right. They are the one, right? And it gets so frustrating. It gets so aggravating to try to deal with the system, because technically they're right. Technically, the neuro guy is right. He's like, yeah, there's a lack of neuroconduction. Ortho guy is like, these bones are degenerated. Yeah, it could be that. It could be prostate issue. It could be gastro issue, right? It could be. And then you sit here and you're like, what the fuck is it? You're like, I don't know. And this is why I say, this is what goes back to, you need to, and it's all going to come full circle in a second, but you need to go to someone, and I say, and again, this is where I'm biased, right? Because I'm a chiropractic student. I say, oh, we look at everything systemically, right? And I'm like, okay, well, it could be, I'm going to say I need to adjust you, right? And the other thing is, keep in mind, like, the specialty that you're going to, I'm not saying they're good or bad or whatever, but I'm saying that they are, I'll put it this way. The chiropractor is going to want to adjust you. Guess what the neurosurgeon's going to want to do? He's going to want to do surgery on you. And the ortho surgeon's going to want to do the same thing. And the gastroenterology guy is going to want to give you pills for the gut. And the urologist is going to want to give you something for your prostate, because he thinks that that's part of it. And the list goes kind of on and on and on, right? And so it's frustrating. But here's what you need to do with all this information. You need to look at this and you need to say, okay, you can't just blindly go through this fucking process. If you blindly go through this process, you will get screwed. I've seen it happen so many times, and that's part of why I'm making this podcast. So you look at this and you say, okay, what is an over-resounding answer from all of these different people? They're saying, oh, it's probably this. This guy says this could definitely be involved. And so if everyone has like a general consensus of, oh, it's likely this, or this is likely involved with that process, yeah, I would say that's probably what you should be targeting. And you probably want to be looking at that further and saying, okay, what is more in depth of the anatomy, physiology, and pathology of this thing, so you can understand more what's going on with your condition and you can make proper decisions. Because the reality is, nobody's going to know the condition better than you. That's it. The world's best internal medicine doctor is not going to know your symptoms better than you know them. Like, it's just how it is. You're the one with the symptoms, bro. Like, it is on you. Boys and girls, it is on you to know what you're dealing with, know what you're doing, and know, like, okay, well, this sounds like the general consensus of information. I should probably look at this further, right? So, you want to do it that. You want to do it that way. And that is roughly how I would navigate through that system. And you need to understand that, like, someone, the other thing is you want to make sure that you understand what exactly a diagnosis is. Because someone can set up a differential diagnosis, which is a list of like, oh, I think it's these top, 5 or 10 things or whatever, right? And they narrow it down. They're like, oh, that's probably not it. Oh, that's probably not it. That's probably not it. And then they have it down to these things, and like, I think it's this, or I think it's this, and then they might need to do more testing to confirm or whatever. And they say, okay, I've arrived at my diagnosis. That is their differential diagnosis. That differential diagnosis can change. It is not set in stone. It's also not set in stone that you're going to have low back pain for the rest of your life. It can change. It can absolutely change. It just needs to be done. It involves you following through on your treatment protocol. So, here's the other thing that a lot of people get up shit creek about, is because they go to 5 different people. Say you went to the neuro guy, you half-assed his program. You went to the ortho guy, you half-assed his, and so on and so forth, down to gastroenterology and urology, because you didn't totally believe in it, right? It's like, because you looked at the anatomy and physiology. Keep in mind, you're not the expert on it. I'm just trying to get you to have a relative understanding of the information. There is so much more that goes into it than what you see on the internet. But I do want you to have like a basic understanding, because you should be responsible for your own health, and you should be responsible for trying to make these things better in your life. So we look at this and we say, okay, well, number 1, the diagnosis can change. Number 2, actually follow through with the treatment protocol. If the guy says, I think it's this, I want you to do this, this, and this, and you think that it's bullshit or it's not, do it. You need to do it to ensure that either it is or it is not. You need to 100% follow through with that treatment protocol, because there have been many people that I have seen in chiropractic offices, because I worked in a chiropractic office, and there have been many people that come in and say, Doc, I've been to 5 different doctors and no one can figure out what's going on with my low back pain. And I'm going to tell you right now, about half of the time they were going to other chiropractors, and they went to a new chiropractor hoping they were going to give them the magical, silver bullet pill of how to fix their low back pain with no effort. Dog, it's going to require effort. You have not been training these muscles, and you have not been doing any sort of, postural, whatever to try to get it better. Like, it's going to take some effort, bro. It's going to take a little bit of hard work. It's going to take a little bit of consistency. So make sure that you're doing, whoever you're going to, make sure that you actually follow through with the treatment regimen that they give you. That needs to be done. If you can't 100% follow through, you can't 100% rule out that that's what it is. And then they can't properly say, oh, well, I need to change my differential diagnosis. Like, not everyone is going to have the perfect differential diagnosis every time. It just doesn't happen. If you're watching this podcast, you probably know that. It's like, it's not guaranteed. So make sure that you're doing what they say, and do it 100% to the best of your ability, to make sure that you can accurately and definitively say, yeah, that's not the issue. Or, oh, holy shit, that might be the issue. Because more often than not, people don't think that that's what it is. And then because they think that they're experts in their own little minds, because they have looked at a 20-minute podcast or a 20-minute YouTube video on low back pain, and they're convinced that this is what it is. It's not. It might be. It also might not be. But the doctor has a decent amount of information, so don't discount the information the doctor has. You're going to them for that information. I'm not saying go in blind. I'm saying go in and understand your shit. But I'm also saying listen to them, because they are the expert in the area, right? So I think I've given you guys a decent understanding of how to look at this system and how to approach it and say, oh yeah, that's probably the best way to go about it. I want you to understand the anatomy, the physiology, and some of the pathologies. Don't get too caught up in the pathologies, though. I want you to get a second opinion. Don't go to social media, short-form content. I want you looking at long-form content if you're going to look at content for this stuff. If you want to read a book about it, read a book about it. Get a second opinion, as in go to different doctors. Go to different doctors and say, okay, what do you think the issue is? What do you think it is? And work through it with them. If you can work through it with them, that's a green flag. If you can't work through it with them, or they just shove you into this pill or whatever, and they just give you the spiel and say this is the medication we give everyone, it works great, probably a red flag. I wouldn't do that shit. No answer is set in stone. No differential diagnosis is perfect every single time. 100% of the time, people make mistakes, and you might have simply, messed up and not told them about something that you might have needed to tell them about. And you also could be the unicorn case. It's like, okay, well, you could be the zebra in the room, right? So yeah, nothing's guaranteed. And I say the zebra versus the horse thing, but like if you hear, I think the saying in medicine is, if you hear hooves clacking down a hallway, it's probably a horse. It's likely not a zebra, but it could be a zebra. So keep that in mind. As in the terms of like the diagnosis, it's likely, it's probably just you need an antibiotic to clear this up. But it could be the zebra of, you have this crazy bacteria in your brain. It's not guaranteed though. That would be the zebra, right? And getting back to it, take what seems to be the overwhelming answer from everyone. Oh, it's most likely this. If you hear that from a lot of people, if you're hearing a common theme be reoccurring, I'm no expert and I'm no doctor myself, but that's what I would look further into, right? So look further into that and maybe find, a doctor or someone that understands that a little bit further. And then the other thing is actually follow through with the treatment plan. You gotta follow through the treatment plan. If it's something that if it's something that you're talking to this doctor and he's like, I think it's this, and it's been a common reoccurring theme, and he's like, I think this is how we should treat it. Regardless of how you think it's right or not, follow through the treatment plan. Follow through that treatment plan 100% to the freaking T, and let them know if you were inconsistent at all. If you jacked up and you didn't take antibiotics for 2 days in a 10-day treatment plan, you might want to tell them, right? Because then they're thinking, okay, well maybe it's not this, and the antibiotics didn't clear it up, so they got to go through their whole differential again, and they got to apply this now to it. And in reality, you just fucked up the treatment plan. Which is not the end of the world. Like you just redo the treatment plan. So, in most cases, you would just redo the treatment plan. But it can be different. So just make sure you tell your doctor that stuff and be that good patient that's like, I am doing everything you're asking me to. I'm doing everything you're telling me to, and don't do it blindly though. But if you are in agreement with your doctor, like, okay, well, I think it's this, and he's telling you this is how to do it to the T 100%. That's the best advice I can give you. I really hope you guys find your way better through this medical system. I understand it's really shitty sometimes, but this is one of the best things you can do, and one of the best ways that you can try to brave your way through this crazy system that I don't even know how it's still standing. So that's all I've got for you guys today. If you guys have any comments, if you guys have any concerns, questions, anything like that, drop them down below. I also am going to link the different platforms down below, and I will link the usernames and the handles there. That's all I got for you guys today. I love you so much. Good luck with your chronic pain, and take care.